Welcome to the Art Elevator podcast, where we explore fascinating stories behind the scenes in the art world. This episode is brought to you by Artifactual History and Larissa Wild Fine Art.
Today's guest is Jason Roske. He is the owner of KC Auction and Appraisal Company, which is an award-winning regional auction house specializing in estates and collection dispersal. For decades, Jason's helped families navigate the complex and emotional process of transitioning art collections into the marketplace. And after recently serving as an executor for a close friend's estate, Jason began thinking about collections in a new way as biographies of the people who built them. And so today we're going to explore what happens when these biographies enter their next chapter. And thank you, Jason. I'm really looking forward to hearing your insights on this. And I know that you started describing collections as biographies of the people who built them. And can you explain a little bit more about what you mean by that?
Yeah, thank you so much, Sarah and Larissa, for having me on the show today. And Sarah, it's good to see you again. Both of you, actually, we've been on shows before together. So when I started out in this business 30 some odd years ago, I was just a picker. I would go anywhere I could think I could make some money. Any garage sale I saw, I stopped at it, gave it no thought ahead of time. And then as I was more active in it, was doing it longer, I realized that there was clues that you could garner from ads in papers or neighborhoods or houses that would indicate there's a possibility of better or more interesting objects being there. And as you said, I was just the executor of a friend's estate, and Rob, a collector of bronzes and art, and he was a world traveler. He was a hairstylist. So everything in his home told a story that you may or may not know, but if you kind of put it together, it became the biography of Rob. And then the objects themselves have their own biographies as well, right? They have their story of where they were made, when they were made, when they were purchased. And now being dispersed from Rob's estate, their story isn't ending. It's just the next chapter in their biography and another chapter in someone else's biography.
Well, that's a really
Love that sentiment because oftentimes when you look at the collection of someone's life, it can be overwhelming. But by taking that perspective, it automatically injects a whole lot of care and curation into how you could start to approach this process.
Yeah, absolutely. The objects are objects, but they're more than that when somebody takes ownership of them. My wife and I, we've been married 30 plus years now, and thinking about it this way, I look at what we've accumulated over the years, and it tells a story. We have two young men for children. Now they're young men, but we still have their toys around. We still have their sporting goods around, but we also have their art around. We live in a historic neighborhood, and on our block there are at least two original Burgessons and oil paintings hanging. That's not the case in a suburb, a new development place necessarily, but where we live, and is the people who like that kind of thing are more apt to be neighbors. And so you just kind of see that more and more when you start to think about it in that way.
I think it's a really beautiful concept. And I love how you describe it because it resonates with what I felt through the years as an appraiser. Larissa and I are both appraisers, and in the estate appraisals we've done often in the collection of objects that, we come in, and often we don't have the ability to meet the person who assembled them. I really do feel like by the end of spending time with this group of, worldly goods that someone chose with care and they meant something to them, I in my mind, I'd always probably called it a self-portrait. So I love that you call it a biography because there's something really crucial about that collection of objects and the meaning in them. And so I'm so glad you are educating people about this concept because I think particularly for other people who are serving in the role of an executive for a loved one, that's going to help give them a framework for moving through it too.
Absolutely. And that's when I started writing the blog post series that I don't know if it was mentioned yet or not, but I did it first out of just a reaction to it. I just wanted to have some sort of diary of my experience of it. And then as people read it and reached out to me, I realized that there's not that firsthand look at the process of being an executor from the position that I'm in as an auctioneer, as well as a collector, as well as a friend. It's just a different mindset than an estate attorney or your trusted financial advisor. They have your best interests at heart, but they're also looking at things in different views. Your family members, your friends are looking at them with different ideas as well. So It's really become, thinking about it educationally wise, it's something I'm really proud of that I did the writing of it and continue to promote that out there.
Yeah, it's a fantastic blog series. It's available on your company website, and I've been really enjoying reading the installments of it, and glad that you're sharing this because, yeah, it's a lot of people don't have that perspective of working in this field as a professional for decades, but then having the personal side of it too. And so I think you are able to provide a really unique perspective. That's an important one.
Thank you.
So, speaking of perspectives, in your perspective, what do you think surprises families the most when they inherit a collection?
Yeah, there's always that. I mean, grief is always the first reaction, and then maybe being overwhelmed. But once you get past that initial reaction, I think the thing I hear most often is regret. A good friend of mine just posted on Facebook, I think it was Tuesday. She's a real estate agent, and she was walking through a house and thinking that this house had stories to it. These items were interesting, and she'd love to get to know the person. And realized that 2 years ago, she had the same thought about her aunt's estate, her aunt's house, but never talked to her about it. And so I think that's probably the most crucial thing is people realize that once you're in that position, those questions are often impossible and nearly impossible to get answered. And so I tell people all the time, I've been saying this for years in my business. Um, Over the holidays, have a dinner where you're not just celebrating, but you're planning and you're sharing those histories and sharing those stories. Because once the writer of this biography is gone, there's nobody to write a postscript. There's nobody to add to it, right? Everybody has their postscript, right? We all input it, influence it somehow once that happens. But that firsthand source, that crucial information, once it's gone, it's gone. And so getting that information from your family and friends before it's too late is so important.
Yes. Yeah. And I find, this is something that comes up a lot for us on the appraisal side. Heirs are terrified that they're going to, in dispersal, and we're about to get to dispersal in a minute, they're going to, give away something that has a lot of value, but they don't know what has value. Or it may be something that it's very obvious there's no monetary value, but they can't understand then why it was important to their loved one. And so then they have that same sense of being frozen from taking action because it's like, well, clearly this meant something, but I don't know what. And
Right.
so that's another reason, I like to describe it as it's an act of love to your loved ones to communicate this kind of information because when they're grieving, that will be one less thing that's a burden for them because they'll have that knowledge.
Yeah, and to tie it to the appraisal end of it, because we do appraisals here, but we actually do very few of them because people are contacting us generally at the point where the rate is set for whatever reason. But appraisals are so important in this conversation if done with the right mindset and the right appraiser being involved, because you're documenting what the object is. And the value is important in that conversation, but knowing that it was important enough to have it appraised is oftentimes more important than the value itself, because values fluctuate. You both know this. Anybody who's watched Antiques Roadshow over the last 30 years knows this when they run their highlights. They always have when on the reruns, they always add is it worth more or less today? And some things have exploded since they did the first airings 20 years ago, and other things have dropped since 5 years ago, right? So values fluctuate, but if something was important enough to have the appraisal work done, it's a good indication that it's something that should be at least discussed in important terms going forward with the family and your liquidation professional, whether it's an auctioneer, estate sale person, or something like that. And or just equitable estate distribution becomes so important for that conversation as well.
Yes, that's a great point. And yes, to really dive into dispersal, you said that dispersing a collection is like editing someone's life stories. I love this continuing the biography
Yeah.
metaphor here. What does that responsibility look like in practice?
Yeah, in practice, it's a couple of things. As say you're a family person is the executor, editing is what is kept in the family, what is donated to museums if that's important or if it's worthy, um, and or selling and distributing that way. For an auctioneer, it's about how do you tell the story of that collection? How do you tell the story of that collector if it's something that the family wants for, as far as the collector, but for the estate, we just had that really great mid-century modern collection out of California. And the entire estate told that story really, really well. He was obviously very passionate about art, both from the 1950s, but also from today. He had works he had commissioned. He had pieces that he had bought from artists and had worked with artists in his gallery. And so sharing that story, editing that biography of that estate, not only helped the estate, from a bottom line perspective, because people love that story when they're bidding. It also helps going forward. I think we mentioned earlier, if not, when the estate is distributed or liquidated, that's not the end of the story. It's the end of the story for that estate, but those items live on. We're caregivers for a short time for the items we own, no matter what we own. And so those pieces that came from the Kevin Lane estate have always got that provenance. They always have that history and backstory. And I would guarantee the people who bought these things have really interesting estates and collections as well. And it's just kind of, like I said, living in our neighborhood, we live around people who value and appreciate original art. This collection was the same thing. The collectors valued and longed for original art and mid-century design pieces. And it's just kind of a really interesting thing to follow. And then the biography, like I said, for that estate might close, but for the objects lives on until they're no longer viable.
Yeah, we think of ownership in such an individual way, but what I really love about the way you are describing this is the object has its own life through many people who love it and have a connection to it. And so when items from a collection are dispersed, they're just finding that next biography that they're going to be part of that person's story.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that we see regularly. And one of the comments or concerns or thoughts we get from clients who are selling their own collection, like they're being preemptive in this, right? We're planning for it. The money they receive is important, but their collection being exposed to and appreciated by other collectors is almost, if not more important to them. They don't want to feel like their things aren't wanted, like they didn't collect things that nobody cares about. And we live in an age when it's easy to feel that way, but the reality is, if you're working intelligently as an auction house, you can find the people who still like these things. The beautiful thing about the internet today is that Martha Stewart doesn't matter. I love Martha Stewart. I think she's amazing. She used to influence my business every month. When that magazine came out, if she had Ironstone in it, we were selling Ironstone if we could find it, right? There's no singular voice anymore. There's thousands of voices out there in every genre that if you like McCoy pottery or you like antique fairy lamps, there are people who love those things, and you do not feel isolated or left out of being a cool kid because you found your cool group. And it's made it easier and harder to find and sell these objects. But I'm excited about it. That's what I love doing, is finding those audiences and reaching those people that still care about this niche thing and maximizing the return for my clients and also the appreciation for my clients.
Wow. And I think there's a really inspiring message there too, that, sometimes we're talking with, children, heirs, family members who inherited items and they're feeling really overwhelmed by the volume, whether they live in a much smaller house or they have a different lifestyle. But there's that sense of the guilt where, well, this loved one really cared about this item. So, I have to keep it even though I don't have that same emotional connection with it. And so I think there's a what you're saying, I think that could actually be a really inspirational message for people where they don't, that object might not be part of their biography, but through, that the right kind of dispersal, they can help it find the next person who's going to love it.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point and something that we do not by accident because we're very intentional, but it's like a secondary thing for us. But yeah, as far as the inheritor of an object or an estate, not wanting to keep it is understandable. And it's always been that way. It's just that those who have kept the things for generations think that everybody should. And they get a loud megaphone at certain points. But the guilt is never important. It's important, but it's not beneficial. But having that idea that these things are going to go to somebody else who loves them, like your parents or grandparents or family or friend member did, is really an important thing, and if done well, is easy to do.
Yeah. So for people in that position where they're feeling really overwhelmed and guilty, they can call you and you can help them out with that.
Absolutely.
I love that sentiment. That's really beautiful. And I treasure the things that someone let go of that I've picked up in various, antique stores and places around the world. So
Sure.
thank you to all of you for letting go of your things too. Yes. So knowing all this, what should collectors be doing now to prepare their collection for this next chapter, whatever it might be?
Absolutely. We've touched on it a little bit, but I think documenting what you have and why it's important to you and why it fits in your collection, why you bought it originally is important. Having these conversations with your family members before it's too late is so important. The communication, I go back to this a lot with people in this setting is communicate, talk to, write down whatever you need to do to make sure that those next family members or inheritors understand what the objects are so they can make informed decisions without the guilt necessarily, but they're just looking at it through whatever lenses they need to look at, but they have information that they wouldn't have had otherwise is such an important thing. And so I think from the collector's perspective, and then again, appraisals are another way to do that. And so if you have a collection of artwork, having it appraised by Sarah, Larissa, or colleagues of ours is so important that it just makes it so much easier for your next of kin or the next generation to move forward intelligently. And I think that's as important as anything. Because like you said before, they just don't want to everybody's concerned that that the item they sell at the garage sales could be the next thing on the road show. I bought it for $30 at a garage sale and it's worth $30,000, right? Nobody wants to be that person. We want to be the person on the show, not the person who sold it for the $30. And so sharing that information is so important. However you do it is just an important process of it.
Thank you. And thank you for the plug about appraising. And yeah, we do estate planning appraisals. And even if there aren't values associated, just having your collection cataloged, that's a service appraisers provide, just having because as you found out firsthand, once an estate gets triggered, there are all of these cascading deadlines that come up really fast, and it can be
Yes.
very difficult to get things done in time because it's often not enough time to really do things properly.
Yeah, you really cannot do full-fledged appraisal work at that point and still maintain any kind of sanity. No, and everything like if there's a one or two things, sure, you can do that, but if it's being left in the house, you're paying if there's a mortgage, but you're paying taxes and insurance and utilities and security every minute of every day of every week of every month. And those costs get pricey quick. And so, as important as the collections are, the house is the most costly asset of an estate at that point. And every day that the house is still there costs the estate and the beneficiaries time and money. So, yeah, getting that work done before you have to, it's done better, it's done more thoroughly, and helps the efficiency of the prospect and project when it's time to and those policies in place.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like the region where I'm located, often, even if people have an amazing collection, because of the property values here, often the house and the land is the biggest asset and with a lot of carrying costs. And so that always kind of creates a strange dynamic where the things inside the house still have to be dealt with, but the house is costing a fortune in the maintenance.
Absolutely, and you're in Virginia, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I live up there, but it doesn't matter if you live any place anymore. Rural land is expensive to own. I mean, Kansas City, which I know you guys on the coast think is flyover country, but we have those houses are the same appreciation value that you've seen in Virginia has happened everywhere. We didn't start as high a benchmark as you guys did. But compared to the value of the state, it's almost always significantly more than the contents. And for the executor to do their job efficiently, the house is one of the first things that needs to really be addressed. And so having the work done beforehand for the contents is so important.
Yeah. and practically and emotionally as well, because it can all come crashing down once that trigger of the timeline hits. So that's graded by. Well, thank you so much for being here with us today, Jason. We have really thoroughly enjoyed your insights in this conversation, and I think these will be really helpful for our listeners and your audience as well to hear it in such a concise way.
Well, thanks for having me again. I like both you so much, and the work that you've done on this show and promoting the appraisal industry is such a great tool and great asset for those out there in the marketplace looking for a good appraiser. So thanks for having me on, and thanks for the work that you do.
Well, thank you. And yeah, we would encourage all of our listeners to go to Jason's website and read his entire blog series. It's really powerful, and I think shares a perspective that is that bridge between the professional and then also the personal experience that is I had never encountered before. And so I'm so glad that you wrote that, because I think it's a really important voice that will help a lot of people.
Thank you so much.
This episode of the Art Elevator podcast was brought to you by Artifactual History and Larissa Wild Fine Art. To stay inspired and informed, join our email list today. You'll receive updates about our latest creations, valuable tips, and a deeper look into the art world. Here's to elevating your life with art and creativity.